I have several clients, and I don't know why they do this. It's like, all right, they're spending $200,000 commission. They're a seller, and they're spending like $200,000 commission on realtors, yet they're spending like less than 1% on attorney fees, and they decide to draft their own contracts or get into negotiation, and then they come back to us later and say like, "Hey Angie, I'm in trouble. This happened." And I'm like, "Why didn't you let us review your document? Why didn't you even tell me about this deal? It would have cost you way less money, and I would have told you that don't do this deal, or I'd give you my recommendation."
Welcome to the Ultimate Real Estate Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Guy Bouchard, and today we have our special guest, Angela Walter, founder of Texas Real Estate and Business Law Firm, real estate and business attorney, works directly with investors, operators, developers, business owners. She's deep in transactions, disputes, foreclosures, partnerships. She's an experienced mediator in real world negotiations, not just theory. She sees how to protect deals and what blows them up. And this connects directly into what I see every day coaching people to try and level up in multifamily. And so I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad being here.
Before we dive into the business side of things, I always like to just get a little bit of an idea of who you are. I'd like our viewers to just connect with you a little bit more on a personal level. So just share a little bit about who you are outside of being an attorney and what the sort of average day looks like for you when you're not practicing law.
Okay. Well, so mother of three, happily married, and I live in Texas. I was raised in California, moved to Hawaii, and then now I'm here in Texas. As far as what my life looks out of when I'm not practicing law, that's hard to say because I work a lot. Sometimes I work 7 days a week and, nonstop for a good month or two. But if I'm not working, sometimes I'll travel. Like recently, I went to Belize. Then I went to Fort Lauderdale with my kids. Let's see, I love gardening, so that's my way to
That's awesome.
de-stress. Like I have my backyard. I'm trying to make a food forest, so I have dozens of trees and berry bushes, like blueberry, raspberry. I have, a bunch of strawberries in the backyard. I like all different types of fruit trees. And then, like hundreds of different vegetables that I, grow seasonally. And then also tea too. So I have a
Wow.
few tea bushes in the backyard as well. So I'm trying to
Okay.
have it where I don't have to depend on the grocery, but it's just, I probably spend way more in building the food forest in the backyard than actually just, going to the grocery store. I probably spent, you know, I spent a lot of money in the backyard just killing plants. Yeah, but that's my main hobby.
That's amazing. And we did talk about your trip to Belize because of course I'm doing this podcast from Belize right now. So I'm
Yeah,
working a little bit remote, and we were just talking about you having some connections here and you've got some potential business contacts for me to connect with, which is fantastic. And I think that speaks to the fact that travel and the ability to work remotely and to live a little bit of a creative lifestyle outside of the boxes we normally put ourselves in. There's some value to that. And I love that you're growing your own food. That's phenomenal. It's a I would call it a passion of mine that I don't pursue at all. But if there was one thing that I would love to have, it would be to have my own organic source of food where I don't have to depend on the stuff we get out of the grocery stores too. So I love that about you. Thank you for sharing that.
of course.
So you also have a very interesting story about how you got into real estate, which I would like you to share as well. So what's your story about what pulled you into real estate law?
Well, actually, so I lived in Hawaii at this time, and I remember my boyfriend, now husband, at that time. We were hiking, and we heard somebody talk about foreclosure, and he said, "Hey, go research that." And so I looked on the internet, and that time there was not much about foreclosure on the internet. It was like back in 2011. So I went to the library and started reading about foreclosures. Still, I couldn't grasp the concept of what foreclosure was through the books. I understood it, but it was just hard for me to connect because it wasn't my world. And at that time, I was making as a I was a preschool teacher. Eventually, I went into finance, but I was a preschool teacher. And then, so I started calling up real property records, asking them questions like, hey, when's the auction? How does it work? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? Such and such. Then I would go to the auction and I would bug the trustees, like, hey, what do you do? Like, how can I find more information? Can I go to the property? Just asking a bunch of questions. The good thing was that no one was annoyed of me at that time. Now it's like if you ask people, they get annoyed of you. Anyway, so fast forward, my first foreclosure I purchased in Florida, which instead of purchasing the actual land, you purchase a note. You purchase the lien from the government, then you foreclose on that lien, and then you get the property. Anyways, that's how I started. I purchased my first one for like $1,000 note, and I reinvested that money into purchasing more foreclosures, and it just kept on snowballing. And I never really pulled money out until later, like later on. But yeah, that's how I got started, just overhearing somebody talk about foreclosure.
Well, the legal part, you were telling me a
Oh yeah.
story about like how you actually became a lawyer. So you that's how you got started in real estate. But then it was very interesting how you became a lawyer and why you became a lawyer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there's actually several reasons why I became a lawyer. It wasn't just one clear path like, hey, this is it. It was so from the time that I purchased my first property till I thought about becoming an attorney was probably about 3, 4 years of just, figuring it out. But it was one was that so I purchased a property in California, and this is when I was like, all right, I really need to consider becoming an attorney. But anyways, I purchased my first property in California, and I was getting a lot of investors contacting me, asking me about the property, such and such. Um, I already had reached out to an attorney for my Florida property. I had some legal issues with, the California property. Also had issues with, at that time, I had an online business. And so I, I was looking for an attorney to sue against this wholesale company, international company that basically gave me really, really bad products, like defective products. But anyway, so I had to hire a bunch of attorneys for all these issues. And then I would send these investors to these attorneys. And so I was thinking to myself, like, you know what? Like, I'm working this one job. At that time, it wasn't daycare anymore. It was a finance company. I was an executive assistant for one of the executors. Anyways, or executives. Um, anyways, I was sending a lot of referrals to these attorneys, and I'm making, this salary that wasn't that much, and it was going towards these attorney bills. And I'm like, these attorneys are so expensive. And every time I have an issue with a property, it's somewhere between $2,000 to $10,000 that I have to pay these attorneys. Well, maybe I should get I should get a law degree, and it would pay, if I think about it, a certain amount of properties that I end up foreclosing on and having to pay these attorneys for. I could probably get a law degree within like 10 properties, or equivalent to 10 properties of attorney fees.
Yeah.
Plus, these investors that I'm sending to these attorneys, they could be my client. So that's how I initially decide, all right, yeah, I'll become an attorney. There's more to it. I had other legal issues, but that was the turning point.
It's like I told you when we spoke about it before, it's a very unique path to what drives you because I mean obviously being in the game of real estate, you're dealing with accountants and lawyers and professionals all the time. I don't think it's ever crossed my mind, no matter how much money that I pay the damn professionals, which is obviously a lot, to be like, huh, I wonder if I should just go do that thing so that I can be paid all of that money that I'm spending and then serve myself and all of my clients. And it's making me think twice about maybe some of the things that I could potentially be bringing in house. So it's very commendable because I don't care how simple the reason is or how complicated it is. It's quite the endeavor. So I'm very, I have a lot of respect for you to go through that work and to go through that effort and now to be the owner of a law firm, a reputable law firm that works in the trenches, and you're involved in the real estate day to day as well. So you're not just a practicing professional, you are an active real estate entrepreneur that is continuing to grow their portfolio, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so those things that it's awesome that those things are together, and I don't think you could get a better power team or a person on your power team than somebody who is actually experienced in the trenches doing the actual stuff that you're paying them to do. So when I'm building a power team or I'm advising any of my clients to build their power team, the number one question that you need to ask a professional is, do you personally do the things that you are advising me on? And if the answer to that is no, well, then their advice is going to be with a grain of salt always because they're not actually doing the ins and outs of the day to day business. So they're always going to have a little bit of limited or call it biased opinion. But when you're in the trenches, you know what's going on a daily basis. So
Exactly.
I respect you, a whole lot more in the business sense of the world and the real estate world for having that in depth
Thank
knowledge.
you.
So good on you for doing that. So I coach people breaking into or scaling multifamily, specifically value add. So my background is buying and renovating apartment buildings. Doing creative structures is always part of that, and all the plethora of things that come along with that. It's not just multifamily; it's hospitality and some other things. But there's a lot of aspects to that. There's when you get into the trenches of construction and in-depth renovations or foreclosure projects that have hidden agendas, or there's lenders or liens or things that can blindside you from a million different ways. It's different than just simply buying something and holding it for the rest of your life. Where do you see people in our world or clients that are in the everyday trenches, or even you yourself, where they underestimate the legal risk?
Would say it's when people don't put together a proper contract and that they haven't done at least a basic background on who they're doing business with. A good amount of people that come to us invest with those that that are acquaintance or, a friend of a friend, and then come to find out that this person has, you know, a history of judgment a mile long, or if they have a contract, the contract is or sorry, they don't have a contract. They have an oral agreement, or they have documents that are not properly written out. Another type of common issue that I come across is whenever they're lending money and they don't have collateral on the money that they don't have some type of security for their money, like a collateral, like for example, a lien on the property, which is also known as a deed of trust, or some type of protection.
Some
It's
type of
just like a
secured
veterans
mortgage
deal.
or collateral on other assets.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that is a big one. There's a lot of that in the real estate world, and those deals usually come with a large amount of trust when they do happen. They do happen all the time, but educating people is a big part of my mission on helping people understand the risks before they invest, even in themselves. And
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest mistakes that I tend to see is that people think, oh well, I don't really want or know how to trust other people, so I'll just go do it myself. And
Or yeah.
I think that can be just as bad, if not worse, for people doing it themselves because they lack the knowledge and the experience. And, my question for you on that one is what mistakes do you see some of the biggest mistakes that people make when getting into real estate investing themselves, when they choose to do it themselves or they're just learning or beginning, whether it's small residential or big multifamily, what are some of the pitfalls you see, the common mistakes that get people into trouble?
Okay, so it's usually when people partner up is when they come to me. Like for example, if they partner up with somebody they didn't realize what they who they knew. I would say the biggest is the finance. So they don't do their calculations correctly. So they don't consider, possible unforeseen repairs. Like for example, they may see the roof, roof is obvious. You'll look at the roof and say, all right, that looks like it needs to be fixed. But something that they may not see is, let's say they remove the vinyl or they remove the rug or something underneath, or it could be like plumbing issues or electrical issues that they were not aware of, or that this property doesn't have the proper permits. So it's those unforeseen things that they don't account for. There's also other issues that they may not account for. So, for example, if they do one of those handshake deals or they don't use a title company or escrow company and they don't check the title, they
Right.
find out later, oh, shoot, I purchased this property and it has like, a bunch of liens on the property, or that there is, permitting issues, or there's covenant issues or some type of encumbrance, or that they don't account for, if this property is actually in a lawsuit. Just, checking title and the finance portion. I would say those are the two biggest, but definitely finance is what I have seen, is that they may be in over their head or they don't understand the finances of purchasing and investing in properties.
It's a big one. You're hitting on a very common theme that I see as well, and that's underwriting. That's analyzing the deal, knowing the numbers, and having your downside protected. And I've been in a
Yep.
lot of deals where we've done very well, but there's also the deals where, just as you're explaining, when you don't account for that downside and you're being too optimistic on the numbers or don't know what to look for, those things can really crush you. So I see the
Exactly.
same thing.
I would say people come to me for both. Of course, I can't provide them finance advice or tax advice. So, but when it comes to title issues, one of the common issues that I see is that, like, for example, they'll buy a property, then they, fix and flip, and then turn out that because they didn't go through title, that they purchased a property that has title issues. Now they're having to hire an attorney to clear the title, but, their money is held up in their property. And before they can transfer it or sell it to another buyer, they need to take care of this title issue. And sometimes that requires us to go to court. Court is not a fast process. It's not one that will take like a few weeks, sometimes not even a few months. It could take like 6 months, sometimes even longer, just depends on the issue at
Big time.
hand. But because it hasn't been taken care of before they purchase the property, they're having to bear the burden afterwards, and now their money is tied up.
All too often.
Mhm.
And these are the simple things that man, those simple little mistakes when you think everything's going well, and the deal can turn upside down pretty quickly by just these simple couple things. Now, you would prevent that from happening when you have a client closing on a property, right? Because those are the things that you look out for before you even enter into the agreement or have a client move forward on a property, correct?
Exactly. So I have a checklist, or my firm has a checklist of things that we tell clients, and sometimes they say they'll risk it, but if they risk it, we have them sign an indemnity clause and a waiver of liability. It's like, all right, we told you, but you're not going to sue us. Here's the document for us to sign or for you to sign. So, acknowledging that we told you.
Of course. No, that's
But
good. See why.
another common issue is construction. So we also handle construction disputes. And in Texas, every state has their own rules, but in Texas, you're not required to have a license. And each county has their own rule as well. Like for example, Galveston, you're required to have a surety bond. But because it's not required to have a license in Texas, you can hire a contractor with maybe 1 year experience or no experience, and or like a handyman, and that person, fixes your property and doesn't do a proper job, and now you may get in trouble with the city because, the permits are not in place, or they didn't do a good job where it ends up being more money because now you have to, remove it and repair it.
So, if I am understanding you correctly, general contractors do not are not required to be licensed in the state of Texas?
Yeah. So plumbers are required to have license. Electricians are required, but not contractors. You could be a contractor without a license. So I can open up a contracting business today with no experience and start soliciting my business.
Even does that apply to home builders as well?
You're talking about developers. So developers, you don't you would hire you could be the contract you could be the developer and the contractor, or you could be the developer and then hire a contractor. So developers not they're not required.
Because where I'm and the reason I'm asking, and I'm a little offshoot, but it's important. When we build homes in Canada, and I know a lot of other states, I think home warranties are a thing that have to be delivered with new builds,
Yeah.
and those can only be delivered from a licensed contractor. So how does an unlicensed contractor or developer deliver a home warranty if they're not licensed? Are they tied together in some way, or are they totally separate?
They're separate. So I could be a developer. Let's say I purchase land and then let's say I buy 100-acre land. Then I replat it where it's 10 10 acre lands, right? So 10 acres, I divide them into 10. And so I'm the developer. So what I would do is I would hire a contractor, and then that contractor would help me with the permitting, with helping me put together building the property. I would get the warranty, and then I would give that to the buyers that purchase that property with the 10 acres, and if I build the house with that 10 acre. But no, it's two separate, contractor and developers are two separate.
Got it.
It could be
Understood.
the same. Sometimes the developer is the contractor as well.
Okay, now when we're doing real estate deals and like I've been a fund manager for my specific deals on a lot of the multifamilies. I've raised capital, I've been the general partner, I've put the syndications together. I steer most people away from that because you're starting to get really dedicated into the world, a totally different world as opposed to just doing your own deals or you got to be pretty dedicated to do that. But are you familiar with general partnership, limited partnership structures, syndications, and that sort of thing as well? Are you involved in that?
I'm involved with that except for syndication. We don't do syndication.
You don't do syndication like group syndications of one
Yeah.
like as a fund manager raising funds.
Yeah, like the 506, we don't do that. In the US, they're called 506.
That's right. Okay, now new general partners that are putting together deals that
Mhm.
are either raising capital or bringing a little bit of capital or borrowing in. Where do new general partners accidentally hurt their own credibility?
Where do they hurt their own credibility?
When they're trying to put deals and partnerships together, you as a lawyer, like what are some of the red flags or the signs that you see from people that are trying to put their own deals together or bring money into a deal that just sort of, maybe shoot up the wrong message or some flares about them or their business?
I don't really see any. Okay, so when people come to me when there's an issue with the general partner is when they don't have proper documentation, when they don't have a plan together, when we do a background search on them and we find that their background isn't as
Yep.
clean meaning that there's judgments against them or there's a bankruptcy. I'm not saying like being in bankruptcy is I'm seeing it from a different perspective because like so the general partner is the one that's supposed to help put the deal together, right? And I mean, let's face it, real estate is all about money. Investors are getting into it because they're hoping to get a return on their investment. And
That's right.
so if the general partner is the one to help establish it, then knowing that this general partner doesn't have such a clean slate when it comes to finances could hurt his or her credibility, right? Also, proper documentation. So I'll have people come to me to review contracts and say like, "Hey, can you read this? Let me ask what you think. All right, let me know what you think. And is this some deal I should get into?" And so if the agreement, so I think for the most part, lawyers can tell whether this was written by AI or by an individual or by an attorney. And when
Yeah.
it's not thoroughly thought out through with all the terms, then in my eye, that hurts the general partner because, he probably either used AI or didn't use an attorney or, didn't go through all the possible issues that may arise in a partnership, right? Because regardless if everyone had good intentions to work with each other, people pass away, people get disabled. This is a risky business. Sometimes you'll get a lot of money and sometimes you'll break even or sometimes you'll be in the negative. And we never know what's going to happen in the future, right? So, for example,
Right.
is there a force majeure clause? Because, no one thought that COVID was going to happen, right? Or there's natural disasters all the time, right? So, in 2017, for example, we had Hurricane Harvey here in Texas or in Houston, and so those little clauses or those clauses that are in contracts are sometimes not in those that are created by AI or somebody that has not done this enough times or haven't you know had an attorney draft the contract for them. So I would say if they had financial issues, and I understand people get into financial issues. It's not like, during COVID, for example, a lot of people lost their job. A lot of like long-term businesses or long-standing businesses failed, right? So I understand that, but if it happens, if it's repeated enough and we find in their background that, there's a lot of debt owed, then that could be a red flag. It's just, during COVID, for example, there was like the PPP program that could have assisted businesses to recoup some of their investments or give them a little cushion and, the proper documentation. I would say the biggest thing is the not having the proper documentations in place and not having a plan in place for these investors.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's your starting point, right? That's your foundation of the entire deal. And to your point, I've seen a lot of things go well. I've seen a lot of things not go well, and most of the time, it's nothing that you would ever expect is going to happen. And it's not until that stuff happens that you then start going back and start realizing, like, oops, would have been nice to have that predetermined, so we're not sitting there fighting it out at the lawyers or trying to sort out the mess later, right?
Yep. Actually, one more to that could hurt someone's credibility is that when I am approached by investors now as an investor and not as an attorney, I ask them questions. And if they don't know how to answer some of my questions, then it and I ask questions to understand how experienced they are. And so that's
Yeah.
how I evaluate whether or not I want to get into a deal with somebody. For example, if I ask them if they're about to develop a property, right? And I ask them questions about development, if they don't know how to answer it, then it may be because they may have never done a deal or maybe one deal and that was it. And so they're confident enough to have another deal. I'm not saying that having a second deal means that they'll fail. But for me, at least, if I were to partner with someone, I want more experience because I'm putting a good amount of money into these investments. And if I'm
Absolutely.
not the one in control of it, then I want to make sure that the person in control of it has been in the industry long enough to know how to pivot if something goes wrong.
Totally get it. And those are very good points. And it's that lack of awareness that a lot of people get themselves into trouble. And the simple thing that you just mentioned is having a list of questions that help identify whether or not someone does have that experience to give you that comfort level. And that's the sniff test that I think everybody takes a little bit for granted. They want to, it's the
Mhm.
trust but verify. You want everything to go well and you want to believe everything's going to be good, but a few hard questions are going to uncover a lot of things early that could really get you to just trust your gut and get out of a mess before it happens. So, what do sophisticated investors look for that beginners kind of miss? And maybe we just touched on it a little bit with that thing, but what are, as an experienced and sophisticated investor coming from a legal perspective, what do you think that some experienced people know to check or to do due diligence on right away versus beginners that just aren't going to have that knowledge or experience?
I would say have a reference check, know exactly what type of deals that general partner has done in the past, and if they have contact information to check that reference, because there's, Google AI, people can still study and sound like they know what they're talking about and make it sound really, really good, but it's harder to fake a reference. I mean, you can still fake references, but I think
Of
that would
course.
be harder to do, especially if that person says, "Hey, I have like 15 references," right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe one or two or three may not be legit, or, okay, but if you say that you have an extensive background and you have all these references, then to provide some type of what do you call it? Yeah, references that you could call up to know if that person, and like you can question that person
Big
instead
time.
of questioning the general partner.
Yeah, for sure. And so when things do go sideways, what are some of the early warning signs that you see before things really start to break down in partnerships?
I notice a lot of our clients will ask for updates or their money back or to renegotiate the terms. And when the other person is, unresponsive or is hard to get a hold of or can't give you an answer right away, that could be a sign that there could be some issues. I have it. Maybe this is not the investor side, but I notice this across industry, whether it's a realtor, lender, title company, attorney, accountant, is that you could be like the best in your profession, right? But if you aren't responsive to your client, they're not going to be happy, and then they're going to either want to fire you, or they're going to start looking somewhere else, or they might even file a lawsuit against you even though you had you're doing everything correctly, because they don't know what's going on because you're not answering, or not you, but when they're whoever they hired is not answering, that concerns them. And so then they start calling us, and we have to we send demand letters and, help with figuring it out for them.
Yeah, the communication is something that comes up a lot. It's such a simple thing. The trust is built through communication. And when that starts to fall apart, it's something that none of us like. And
Yeah.
we just want to know what's going on, right? Good or bad. And I've had some really, you have sophisticated investors that just know how it is and they don't care if the news is bad or good. They just want the news. Like
Yes.
just tell me what's going on so that I can adjust or pivot or do my thing. But the last thing anybody wants is to be left in the dark, not knowing what's going on. And the worst case scenario, of course, starts to play in everybody's mind. So I guess that is a pretty key early sign if the communication's not there. But I've also had operators too and people in partnerships where everything's going just fine and the communication sucks. And that's almost what blows the deal up. It's like, the fact that you're just not getting back to people or not
Yeah.
being responsive is pissing people off. And it's like, that's when people start to, lose their faith and it's unnecessary.
Exactly. I had a call yesterday, and it was a consultation where this lady, she hired an attorney. That attorney has been around for about 30 years. I know who he is. He's opposing counsel of mine. He does decent work. Anyway, she told me that, he's very unresponsive, sometimes doesn't give her an answer for about a month, doesn't return her call, and she was looking for a new attorney to take on her case. Well, I went through the court docket to see what was going on. I told her what has been happening, and I was like, "Yeah, your attorney has been killing it. Your attorney is doing X, Y, and Z for you, has gotten orders granted, has gotten things dismissed for you, and he's a decent attorney. It's just that he doesn't return the call." And so I told her, like, "Yeah, you can either hire us and we'll be responsive and we'll do the work, but he's not doing a bad job as you think he is, but it's because he's not communicating it to her."
Big time.
But I also get it from an attorney standpoint, because our service is our time. And so we'll have, let's say 30, 40 clients. And if every single client wants to talk to us on a regular weekly basis, then it's going to be harder, or it's going to take more time out away from our family because we're having to work their case and talk to them. So we understand that part. It's
Of
just
course.
I think some professions, mainly the service industry, it's hard because you're also having to do the work, not just talk to your clients.
Yeah, and man, I've been guilty of that even just as a general partner in deals because, I underestimated when I was first getting into it, how much work and energy it actually took to manage people's money.
Yeah.
And it took more time and energy to talk to the investors and get the reports done and keep them up to date than it did for me to do the damn deal. And the deal suffers because
Yeah.
you're no matter what, you're taking time away from actually doing your job. As a lawyer, obviously that's your world. So I mean, you're bombarded with that kind of stuff, and most professions are. But I think I think I think there's probably a little bit of awareness that does need to go into people's experience in dealing with everybody in a profession. That there's just got to be some breathing room too. There's only a certain level of expectation that you can actually get someone. And the rule of thumb is too, the smaller the investor, typically the more work they are. Right? The smaller the investment, or the smaller the fee, or the smaller the issue, the more work and energy it takes to serve those clients. Sometimes not applicable to everybody, of course, but
Yeah.
there's that as well. So, what is everybody's talking about, like reacting to something not working or not feeling good. And I'm gonna talk a little biasly from a Canadian standpoint, because in Canada the motto is sue last. Like suing is your last
Yeah.
option. And in the US, I hear a lot, and a lot of our dealings are the opposite experience, where it's almost like sue first and ask questions later. And my question for you is, and I don't know if that, how much truth there is and not truth there is to that. I'm not painting that brush, but the question I have is, what do you see happening too quickly? What's the mistake that some people make that maybe turn something into a legal issue that doesn't necessarily need to be turned into a legal issue? Like, what
Oh, yeah.
do do you see that?
I do see that. So a lot of people come to us they come to us saying that, hey, my partner screwed me over with the money. I should be owed X, Y, and Z. And I want to go after that money that is owed. And so I don't do any of the finance. I don't want to get into malpractice issue because I'm not good with math, right? And so we have a finance consultant, and then we tell our client, hey, because this deals with a lot of calculation, and even though I've seen like hundreds of closing disclosures, I'm not gonna, accounting, I'm not gonna deal with that. Go to a finance consultant, right? Somebody that can do the calculation and figure out if money is missing or not. And then also the damage model, whether or not a lawsuit is worth it, because sometimes people will want to fight for $50,000, but it'll be like $51,000 in attorney fees, right? So it's not, they need to think about like whether or not it's worth the fight. So because they go to us, a lot of people come to us because there are, like breach of contract financial issues. Then what we do is we send them to the finance consultant, or they can go to any finance advisor to help them with the numbers. And if there is a legitimate discrepancy, then come to us, and then we can discuss the legal issues. And I would say a good amount of people don't do the evaluation correctly. Like, for example, at closing, they don't think about, all right, the realtors need to get paid, the lender fee, the title costs, the title policy costs. Like maybe there's a credit, right? Seller's credit. And so because they don't take all these other, calculations into mind, they think that, oh, my partner screwed me over. Or, when sometimes people buy properties, or not buy properties, but buy businesses, right? they should do their evaluation and see if this is a profitable business or not, or if they can trim some of the fat so that they can increase their revenue or profit. And if they don't do the evaluation correctly, they um they might not be buying a business that they thought they would profit on. And so our finance consultant helps them with the evaluation. And again, they don't have to use our finance consultant to do the evaluation. They can go to another company to do the evaluation to double check that their numbers are actually what they think it to be before filing a suit, because we don't want it where we end up come trial, right? And we show the court, we show the jury, like, hey, this is what the seller promised, this is what we got, or this is what this was the closing, and then this is what my partner gave me, and then come to find out that they just screwed up on their numbers. And so
Right.
we want to make sure that those numbers are correct in the beginning. It is a lot of money to go through a lawsuit, and that's just time wasted and money wasted and resources as well if they don't have the right numbers before going, and it also makes them look like a fool and us look like a fool if we don't
Yeah,
check the books.
for sure. And that that brings up something for me as well, which professional, everybody likes to get the numbers checked out. You mentioned earlier people bring you legal agreements all the time to check it out before investing.
Mhm.
Offerings, of course, they have a couple components. They have a legal agreement that you're entering into, and but then there is the financial, the performance, right? There the investment performa of what the projections are looking like at the beginning of a deal. Where does someone go to get due diligence? Like, how far would you go in giving someone the advice on the actual projections and the performa of what the deal is going to deliver from a number standpoint? The legal side of it we've covered, but from a number standpoint, how does someone protect themselves on that end of it
I would
before?
have to give you the finance consultant's information so that you can ask him, because when I say I don't do any of that, I don't even know the checklist that he has. I do know that he has an Excel spreadsheet with all his evaluation, and he also has a checklist of what he goes through. But because I don't do the finance, I can't tell you what it all entails.
So
Like,
when you're investing into a deal, do you bring your do you analyze the numbers yourself and kind of, I mean, I know
I see what you're saying.
you're saying that, you don't know the numbers, but when you see a pro forma, what do you do? Do you verify it yourself and verify the numbers and do the background check, or do you bring it to your financial consultant to say, "Hey, can you verify these numbers for me and tell me if this guy's blowing smoke up my butt?"
Okay, so you know that quote, "Do as I say, not what as I do." That's me. That's me. So, I do not check the numbers. I have a professional check the numbers, similar to, like, I don't do okay, so I have my real estate license. I don't do my own real estate. Like, I only use it because I look for the MLS and check out the deals, but I hire professionals to do it. So somebody that checks the numbers, somebody that like looks for the properties for me, somebody that does the lending. I leave it up to the professionals, and then when they show me, is this a good deal? And they show me why it's a good deal. That's all I look at. For example, when the finance consultant comes to me and then like, for example, we buy multifamily, right?
Yeah.
And we already want it fully occupied. If not fully occupied, at least the number has to make sense. So if, for example, if only 5 out of the 8 are occupied, does it still make sense to buy this property? So he'll show me the numbers and he'll show me, all right, is this actually performing? Is there going to be a loss? And if there is going to be a loss, how many occupants does it need to have to break even? And then also, what are the repairs, the estimated repairs, what it has been the revenue in the past, the profit and loss. And anyways, he'll show me the numbers and I'll ask him questions. And if it looks like a good deal, then I purchase it. But if you want a detailed description, then I'll have to get you in contact with our finance consultant.
Yeah, and I verify my own numbers. I verify it. I'm in the game. I know the stuff. it's napkin budget for me to start a deal, and then I know how to do the due diligence. But I'm genuinely curious for you as a real estate lawyer, also investor, just
Uh-huh.
you specifically how you do it, because everybody gets offered deals all the time. And most
Yeah.
people don't have the experience. They just want to invest. And it's like most people don't know if they don't have someone like myself or an experienced operator or someone who does know the numbers on deals. It's like
Yeah.
they're trusting. They're trusting
Yeah.
everything that's in that spreadsheet. And it's like, how does that person go and verify the numbers or get some sort of confidence in the numbers from someone who's actually going to know what they're talking about?
So it would be the taxes, and then also for our deals, we want it turnkey, and we always want it at least 1% cap rate. So far, we've had good success with all our investments, our highest being 12% cap rate, but it has to be in the positive. It can't be in the negative. And another thing that I check out is the property management company.
Yeah.
All our properties are managed by property managers. We don't manage any of our properties. And we check how fast do they fill in these apartments, and what their reputation is as far as like taking care of the tenants.
Yeah. Big time. Property
Yeah.
management is the key. It's the most grueling part of the business. It's the most
Yeah.
portion
Unappreciated too. Yep.
underpaid and underappreciated portion of the business, and it accounts for the most of the bottom line. Like it's a make or break on all the deals, and people don't
Yeah.
really understand it.
Yeah. And they're dealing with the headache. Like I don't ever talk to my tenants. I talked I probably spoken to maybe 2 tenants throughout. I've never s I don't talk to any of my tenants.
No, I don't blame you at all. There's a reason there's property managers, and it's because we have our own day-to-day business, and it's not talking to our tenants on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So where does complexity really start to come into play from a legal perspective as people scale their portfolio and they build their business within the real estate world? Where does it really start to change?
The complexity, I would say, uh, the more I don't know actually. I do know that there is a level of when you hit a certain amount of properties, depending on the property management company, the more revenue, and it seems to be that the more revenue you make, and there's like certain thresholds, like for example, you're making $1 million in revenue, $3 million in revenue versus like maybe 200 in revenue. It's just different problems. And then the type of property, adds to the layer. For example, or not type of property, but the type of deal that you have. Like for example, like buying land and then developing it is more complex than purchasing a single family house and just renting out that one single family house versus maybe having an Airbnb or VRBO property. And so the complexity I would say would be the type of investment that you have and then possibly the revenue. So for example, if you have I don't know, 100 unit, right? 100 unit property, and you're having to evict these tenants, right? There's a good chance that you're probably having to evict more than if you had like maybe 2 or 3 properties.
Big time.
And then that also means more legal issues, more cost of repairs, compliance with the state, and those sort of things. And then also, complaints from the tenants to make sure that they have a habitable property to live in.
So yeah, the more complex the deals, it's a little bit hard to gauge depending on what someone's game plan is. But I always tell my clients or my partners that you have to put a little bit of thought into where you're planning to go, because I feel like the plan that you have is going to be based on the infrastructure you have. You don't want to be, putting together a residential legal structure and then start buying those hundreds of units of apartment buildings. You kind of want to know what that plan is a little bit in advance. And do you help people plan for that? Do you help sort of put that foundation together and look out a little bit more? on people getting into it, or do you feel more like one step at a time, and as you do the deals and as the complexity grows, then we'll build the suit along the way?
So usually people come to me when they already have an issue or that they're just getting into business or
Okay.
getting into business in Texas. So I would say most of our clients are either new investors or they're jumping ship from another attorney. And
Okay.
so in the beginning, it would be just helping them set up their company and then not necessarily setting up a game plan for them to build their portfolio. Just because, even though from an investor's standpoint, I understand because they're looking at us for legal guidance, we usually just help them with setting up their business and setting up or drafting their documents or reviewing their documents. And then the other half is that whenever they're already in a business, whenever they're already in a deal and they are in dispute with their partner or owner or a third party, that's when they come to us. So it would be figuring out how to, fix whatever problem they have. I would say there's a small percentage of people that actually prevents the issue than there are people that come and fix the problem afterwards. I wish we had more clients that prevented the issue. It's just, I mean, attorneys are expensive. That's one reason why I became an attorney, right? Because I was like, you guys are so much money, might as well, cut that cost.
See some of that go into my bottom line instead of yours.
Exactly.
That's awesome. And so what's one document that everybody should understand a little bit better?
Now, for real estate investors, I would say they need to know the purchase agreement in and out. They need to know exactly what the title document looks like, the warranty deed. And they also, if they're getting third party finance, they need to know exactly what their rights and obligations are with that lender.
Yeah,
So
those are
those
good.
are the main documents, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, good ones for sure. And when should people do you see a lot of people trying to handle a little bit of their own legal themselves and then maybe come to
Oh,
you and
yeah.
it's oh, okay, I've gotten in over my head a little bit? Is that
All the time, even
really?
our clients, oh my gosh. So I have several clients and I don't know why they do this. It's like, all right, they're spending $200,000 commission, they're a seller, and they're spending like $200,000 commission on realtors, yet they're spending like less than 1% on attorney fees. And they decide to draft their own contracts or get into negotiation. And then they come back to us later and say, like, hey, Angie, I'm in trouble. This happened. And I'm like, why didn't you let us review your document? Why didn't you even tell me about this deal? It would have cost you way less money. And I would have told you that don't do this deal, or I give you my recommendation. Anyway, so
So
I understand.
when should people stop? Like what are some of the things that maybe people could handle a little bit more on their own, but when like
Okay.
what's that line? Where's like just stop. Like call your freaking lawyer, don't be a dum dum.
That's hard to say because that's hard to say where to draw the line because I've seen contracts where it's like 1 or 2 page contracts and they understand the contract, but then it's the omitting these terms that got them in trouble. Or it's like a 50-page document or 100-page document that they're in a rush to sign this deal and they trust whoever they're working with.
Right.
And then they find out later they just signed their life away, right? So I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I got another call from one of my long-term clients. He's in the business of buying franchising. And so he's selling this one business, but he got into a commercial lease agreement and he has a personal guarantee. And so what a personal guarantee is that if his company, the tenant, is delinquent or in default, then he personally has to pay for rent, right? And in that personal guarantee, it says that if he sells this business to a third party, he is still personally liable. So
Wow.
not only is his business not liable, not just liable, but let's say John Smith that he sold it to doesn't want to pay. So he's personally liable. And
Unbelievable.
And anyway, so I've reviewed and negotiate commercial deals for him. He didn't use me for this one. And I asked him why, and he said this was a good property. I didn't have time. I just wanted to close on it. And so now he's hiring us to see if we can negotiate with the landlord to get him off. And so it's going to cost him more to negotiate out because the landlord now has the leverage,
Yeah,
whereas possibly there would have been more fair play if he negotiated that in the beginning
of
to
course.
remove that extra term.
Yeah, and I don't, I I've been in the legal world a lot as, as an entrepreneur, business owner, real estate guy. I'm in the weeds all the time. I don't think there's ever been a time where I've like, yeah, I got this. Like, I'll just, I'll omit my lawyer from this one. Like, I'm guilty of probably paying my lawyer too much, but to your point, I've seen it go so far the other way that it's just not worth it. It's not worth the time, the energy, the effort. It's like, man, if I gotta pay $500 to have something reviewed and have a proper document drafted that I feel maybe could have been done myself, the ease of mind that I get out of that, or at least lessening the consequences down the road. I can't see why people try and handle that stuff themselves. But to your point, you see everybody spend a lot of money on a lot of things, and taxes and or lawyers and accountants are like the two things that you should not cheap out on because they have the biggest impact on your bottom line moving forward that people just don't see.
Yeah, and it's not just reviewing a contract, you're also getting insurance, right? So if we
Yeah,
screw up, well,
exactly.
there's malpractice. So we have to make sure that we do it correctly or to give you that extra, protection.
Yeah,
Um
big time.
and so, and I understand why, because I try to put in investors in perspective. You do have AI now. You also have Google, and if you've gone through enough deals, then some of this stuff is like, all right, I got it. Like my client, for example, this is not his first rodeo. He's done this many times, and so he was confident that it was going to work out.
Aren't we all?
That's
It's
why we
never
get into these deals.
so we've talked about a lot today. There's there the legal world is vast, and in real estate there's a lot of moving parts, but I always make sure that the structure is sound, that I've got my lawyer in my back pocket on the deals, that we have every box checked that we can possibly check to make sure that there's no issues moving forward. And it's what I coach people on. And it sounds like you are practicing it every single day and you're doing it every single day. And I think there would be a lot of people that would get a lot of value out of working with you. And
Thank you.
I want to thank you for the time that you spent with me today and sharing your information, sharing your knowledge. I want to do everything I can to promote you and your business and to help investors of all kinds and partners alike to really leverage the people in the industry that know what they're doing. It really sounds like you're one of those people. So I'm really looking forward to communicating with you more in the future and possibly even doing some deals. It sounds like we're
Same
playing a
here.
little in the same sandbox, and now I know what I got to do to get past your safeguards, and it sounds like I need to get a hold of your financial consultant to see what the criteria is. But I really appreciate you sharing everything with us today.
Same here.
And
Thank you.
so Angela, what's the bet? We're gonna all share a link, of you and your business and stuff. But is there any special instructions where to find you, how to do business with you, how to get a hold of you, other than just going online, calling your office?
Um, well, that would be it. So it would be www.treblegal.com. That's TREB legal.com. Or they can give us a call at 8.
Perfect. Perfect. And I forgot to ask you. You said you had 3 kids.
Yeah.
How old are your
Oh, so Bella is my baby, and she's turning 2 in 2 days.
Wow.
And then we have John, who's 4. He's a boy. He's like, when you think boy, I mean, farts, poops, bugs. He's a boy. Wants to jump off the roof, and he's 4 years old. He's a boy. And then we have our 16-year-old Nicholas. So those are my 3 kids. You have 4 kids, right?
I have 4 kids. Yeah, 12 10, 10, and 7. So I've got two twin girls inside of two boys who, yes, I've also got boys. So I know all about it. We're on this crazy adventure in Belize and looking at the next chapter of our life here in 2026. So I can appreciate what being an
That's
entrepreneur,
awesome.
business owner, and investor and all that stuff is while trying to raise your family. So I implore you for that as well. It's no small feat what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, if we've learned anything today, it is how to protect your downside. Some of the things, the tricks and the trades of things you got to think about before you get into real estate deals. Partnerships is a big part
Mhm.
of that as well. And so, if anybody wants to get a hold of Angela, you have the information. Angela, I just want to say thank you one more time for taking the time today to share a little bit about yourself, your family, your business, and everything that's going on. And I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Real Estate Lifestyle Podcast. Take care. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.